in Scotland at University of Edinburgh. And we are very privileged to have Minister Audrey Tang joining us for the Spotlight Taiwan lecture hosted by the University of Edinburgh in collaboration with the Kelowna Taiwanese Cultural Society in Canada. And before we introduce our speakers, we would like to thank the Taipei Representative Office in the UK, Edinburgh office, and the Ministry of Culture in Taiwan for the sponsorship, and to Dr. Li Hengxu at University for project management. Due to the limit of time, our warm thanks to many friends and counselors and general support are acknowledged in the chat box. And our keynote speaker, Audrey Tang, is Taiwan's Digital Minister for Social Innovation. She is a software programmer known for revitalizing the computer languages and for building the online spreadsheet system in collaboration with Dan Bricklin. And she served on Taiwan's National Development Council's Open Data Committee and K-12 Curriculum Committee, and led the country's first e-Rulemaking project. Previously, the minister worked as a consultant with Apple on computational linguistics, with Oxford University Press, with Socialtext on social interaction design. She actively contributes to G0V, a vibrant community that focuses on creating tools for the civil society with the call to fork the government, and currently she also, contributes to various apps in the pandemic as well. And maybe we'll hear more from the minister later on about the, her view on the apps. And our discussant, Dr. Wen Lai, today completed his medical training at Seton University in New Jersey and Case Western Reserve University and University Hospital of Cleveland in the States before he returned to Canada and opened his own practice in Kelowna. And he is also the clinical assistant professor at the University of British Columbia and a neurologist and sleep specialist practicing at Kelowna General Hospital and the president for Kelowna Taiwanese Cultural Society. So followed by the minister's speech and the conversation with Dr. Lai, and we'll open the floor for 30 minutes of Q&A for housekeeping. So the audience microphones are muted currently, and then you'll be able to, we'll open the microphone later on for the Q&A session. And we are very much looking forward to learning about, firstly, the minister's vision of transformative technology and social innovation. So please join us to welcome Minister Audrey Tang. And over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good local time. Can you see and hear me? Okay, it's working well. I'll try sharing my screen and we'll see if that works. Do you see a cute dog? Okay, you do see a cute dog. Okay, so this is Zongchai, a Shiba Inu Chai Chuan, right? Zongchai. And so the Zongchai Shiba dog is a symbol of our not just social innovation, but also the overall strategy of countering the pandemic with no lockdown so far, and also countering the infodemic, the disinformation crisis with no takedown so far. And we intend to keep it this way. And this very cute dog is a real dog, lives with the participation officer of the Ministry of Health and Welfare. In each ministry, we have a team of people called participation officers, or POs, that engage the public on trending hashtags. Just like media officer addresses journalist questions, or parliamentary officer address MPs questions, the participation officer is in charge, for example, to explain the physical distancing rules, saying when you're indoor, please keep 3 Shibas away, wear a mask, or when you're outdoors, keep 2 Shibas away, explaining in multiple languages the importance of covering your mouth and nose when sneezing, and also spread the idea that masks are there to protect your mouth from your own unwashed hands. And these innovative ways of communication is not just one direction. It's truly multi-directional, what I call listening at scale. Indeed, in the very beginning of this pandemic in 2019, when Dr. Li Wenliang's message, and I quote, that there's 7 new SARS cases in the Huanan seafood market gets posted on the social media worldwide. In my knowledge, only in Taiwan did it result in a decisive government action after a young doctor, No More Pipe. She posted this message on PTT, the Taiwan equivalent of Reddit, except the PTT has no advertisers or shareholders. PTT is in the social sector, an open community, literally a student pet project for 25 years, that people are in there for social purpose, not for this profit. And because of that, the PTT contributor triaged this message immediately. So on the very next day, we began health inspections for flight passengers coming in from Wuhan. And so this is, again, a fertile ground for collective intelligence and social innovation. We also has this toll-free number, and now a toll-free SMS number too, 1922. A one-stop shop where you can call regardless of whether you have a smartphone. You can call using a landline and so on to ask about pretty much anything related to the pandemic and the infodemic. And there's more than 2 million calls last year alone to this number. And often it results in decisive government action, also literally in the next 24 hours. For example, last April, there was a young boy that called saying, hey, I have the mask you rationed, but all I got was pink masks. But all the boys in my class have navy blue medical grade masks. I don't want to wear pink to school. Do something about it. The very next day on the 2 p.m. daily press conference, at the suggestion of the participation officer, the person who lives with the Shiba dog, everyone wore pink. And also at his suggestion, Minister Chen Shizhong even said that Pink Panther was his childhood hero. So suddenly, the boy became the most hit boy in the class, for only he has the color that the heroes wear, and the hero's hero, I guess, wear. And so this civic participation results also in the fair distribution of PPEs, such as the mask map, which was contributed by the govtw G0V community in Tainan initially, that shows the available PPEs around each spot. And I brought this idea, talked to the premier, and said we need to trust citizens with real-time open data so that this data is updated every 30 seconds. And now, 1 year after the mask rationing map rolled out, the same team also rolled out the 1922 SMS service that allows a very easy check-in in public venues. It has very good adoption that the 5 telecoms have agreed to waive SMS fees in a per message basis, so it's all toll-free also, and people can just use their phone to scan the QR code or even manually enter the random code of the place and provide check-in for quick contact tracing. And we also have a counter disinformation line bot that doubles as a QR code scanner, so people can receive cute dog messages on a daily basis while providing safety check-ins that allowed including the feature phones and smartphones to both work. And so I would simply say that the attention to privacy protection, the attention to the cybersecurity is built upon the existing services that people already come to trust, because the data is only stored in the telecoms. I mean, if you don't trust your telecoms with your SMS, probably you should switch a different telecom. But we still do provide the option of pen and paper, or sometimes people use a 连续章, a seal, an ink-based way to leave their names, and that's still on a parallel track with the check-in service. But again, this is a people-public-private partnership in that the government didn't come up with this idea by ourselves, but rather the people, the GovZero people, came up with this idea that are widely applicable and sets the social norms so that we implement and work with the economic sector, such as the telecoms, to implement. And I'm told that I should keep my opening remark to 10 minutes. And so this is my 10 minutes. Looking forward to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Minister. And yeah, I think followed by your 10 minutes, the very brief, quite inspiring talk. And I think we'll invite some conversation questions from our discussant and Dr. Wen Lai. First.
Thank you, Dr. Yan, and good morning to Minister Tang, and good night to Dr. Yang in UK. And thank you so much for letting us co-host this very inspirational session and discussion with Mr. Tang. I would like to first express my very sincere gratitude. Your story has been an inspiration for many, and we are so honored to have you here with us today. My very first question is about the journey that you have gone through that make you who you are now. Social order are often maintained by enforcing certain restriction and conformity. Individuals who are not fitting into the box are often considered as deviant or often are facing external discrimination and perhaps more frequently the internal conflict. While facing many challenges being different, would you mind sharing who or what influence or inspire you the most, and what best help you transcend from being different to now being successful? And what wisdom can you share with those who are currently struggling in finding their sense of own identity in a society that has very many different perspectives from theirs?
Thank you. Thank you for the great question. My main influence came from my middle school head of school, Principal Du Huiping. When I was 14 years old, I still remember going to visit her office, explaining to her with some email printout that I want to do research 16 hours a day on the internet, on the World Wide Web, which is a really new thing, by the way, in 1996. And Principal Du Huiping asked about what I mean by 16 hours of research. And I simply explained that there's this archive, ARXIV, preprint server, it's still around by Cornell University, that I found that people creating knowledge did not treat me as young or different because across the email, all you can see are each other's contributions anyway. So I just wrote to the authors of those preprint papers, and we started doing research together in no time. They didn't know I was just 14 years old. They didn't know that I have to look up a lot of dictionary words in order to complete an email because my English was rather rusty back then. So Principal Du Huiping heard my argument. I prepared a lot of counter argument to her opposition in my mind, but she thought about it for a minute and said simply that, okay, from tomorrow on, you don't have to go to my school anymore. And I'm like, okay, what about the compulsory education? And she's like, okay, I'll cover that for you, meaning probably that she'll fake the records. And so what I'm saying is that that instilled in my mind this feeling that a career public service is the most innovative of all people, because she has the guts, really, and the empathy to cover for me, and not just for me, but later on we will develop together the Alternative Education Act that enable up to 10% of Taiwanese school children to also choose homeschool or an alternative school not bound by existing curriculum. And so this then paved the way of the new basic education curriculum, which already prescribes autonomous learning, as well as interaction across generations, as well as cross-disciplinary transcultural studies. And so I do think that on the internet, nobody is strange. Even if your interest is so niche that only one person in 1,000 is interested in that. Still, in Taiwan, that means something like 20K people. And so if you join the internet group, then you will feel that there's nothing abnormal about caring about Swift trust, about coding, about things like that as a 14 years old. So that's my main answer to your question, is that the career public service need to co-innovate across generations.
Great. Well, thank you so very much. So there's a bit of extension on that particular question, and this is stemming from your discussion with Taiwan Insider on July 20th, 2020. You have talked about how digital social innovation is to bring technology where people are rather than asking people to conform to the government. In your opinion, what can be done as a society and as a government to be more inclusive, including those people who are considered different, those people who are not fitting into the box according to the standard that we know of through digital social innovations?
I think inclusion begins with co-creation, again, across generations. You see here, Grandma Yang. When I develop new digital services, such as the mask rationing pre-ordering system and now the vaccine appointment system, I work closely with my own grandmother, who is now 88 years old. And she often introduced her younger friend to me to run such focus group studies. And so Grandma Yang is my grandma's young friend. She's 77 years old, so young only to my grandma. And when we run this service past her, she offered a lot of very good observations. For example, we originally intended to pre-order the mask and by extension the vaccines using the ATM system, where they can insert their debit card into the ATM, wire about €2 to the Center for Disease Control, and receive a copy that they can then redeem for the mask rationing and so on, or for the vaccination. But Grandma Yang very astutely observed that she is afraid of the ATM machine. That is to say, she was afraid that once her input gets wrong, maybe she will wire not €2, but 2,000 euros out, and she did not quite know how to recover from such a case. So there's a lot of anxiety. She said instead, why don't just use the national health insurance card? And without entering a password, she know already that by law, this can only be used for public service purposes and never for financial purposes. And because we have universal health coverage, we are actually much more inclusive than if we use the ATM card, which would exclude people who did not have a debit card, or if their bank account has been terminated. But everyone has a health card in Taiwan. So by her suggestion, we switched entirely to use the national health card for both PPE rationing and for vaccination now. And all the technological underpinnings, such as enabling the FamiPort or other convenience store machine to read the health card in a secure way, that falls to our duty. So that means that we are bringing technology to where people are. We're not asking people to conform to where technology are. And this is, I think, what is the most important thing about inclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Tang, for that wonderful sharing. I've listened to, as I was preparing for my questioning, I actually did quite a bit of research. And with your conversation with many others, you used the term co-creation quite often, and you also mentioned it today as well. While I was searching on the thing that was established and accomplished in the past, you being the digital minister, you have started the movement and hosted the website, the join.govtw, allowing citizens to truly involve in the government and affair. Would you please kindly explain to us how that works and how that can also apply to other governments, such as in Canada here as well?
Definitely. Join.gov.tw is a one-stop shop for participation online. So as you can see, the three main buttons. One is that I have an idea. So it's the petition system. The second is the consultation system, where the government has an idea and want to ask for feedback. And finally, there's the accountability layer, where all the public budget is shown, and everyone can actually see exactly how and when did those budgets go out. And people can interact with the public service even after their ideas is implemented as a long-term public service. And so this idea of 说到做到, right, of being accountable is the most important thing in the joint platform. And you can see that in each and every ministry, more than 2,000 different projects are being tracked there. And anytime people find a omission or anything that needs to improve better, they can start a petition in the same website. And the website even recommends similar petitions, much like how Amazon or Netflix recommend new books or movies for new petitions for people to join. And once they collect 5,000 signatures, the minister is required to offer a point-by-point response, and often every twice a month, if it's interagency cross-ministerial issues, then I personally, with my office, hold collaboration meetings across different ministries. For I'm a minister at large, meaning that I work across different ministries. So for each emerging issue, if the different ministries have different takes, then we meet face-to-face with the petitioner, with the stakeholders, and to date, more than 1/4 of such petitions are started by people who are not even 18 years old. That is to say, they could not vote, but they can already set agenda for the society. For example, on banning plastic straws for takeout of the national identity drink, the bubble tea. That is something that started by the 17 years old. And when I met her in the collaboration meeting, along with the Ministries of Economy and Environmental Protection, I asked her, why are you starting such a petition that got so popular so quickly? And she's like, well, it's my civics class assignment. So you see that it's already part of the basic education.
Thank you. So truly, from sound of it, young people are the future, the generation for the future. So they are the people who are contributing most of the ideas to the government for discussion. And it's just a fantastic idea that the government is allowing ordinary people like you and I, or like me and Dr. Yang, to be able to pitch in ideas for further support from other citizens and further taking that topic for a parliamentary discussion. So truly the people are setting the agenda for the government. That's sort of an idea behind that movement. Is that correct?
That is correct. And for the public service, previously they were afraid of such participation because they think there's more noise than signal. But with the help of participation officers who are, professionals in engaging the hashtags, as well as crowd moderation, and by designing a space online where it's only possible to make contributions and not the more divisive, conspiracy theory-driven, more antisocial corner of the social media, we built, in a sense, our own pro-social media that's part of the civic infrastructure. So people would not squander their calories on the more antisocial corners of social media in order to have a town hall-like deliberation. We can hold our deliberations using live stream technologies, using AI-based listening and scale technologies that enable people to find a good enough consensus rather than dividing among the people's ideologies.
I see. Well, that's fantastic. So by allowing people to pitch in ideas for discussion and to display publicly online, this would truly allow the government to become more transparent. To extension of that, is my question would be your concept of radical transparency. The government are often seen as a very close entity. Citizens often have the perception that if you're not in it, then you will not know the truth. Some would even argue that even if you are in it, you still might not know the whole truth. One of your policies, as you mentioned, is to have radical transparency. Myself, I'm quite interested in understanding why you added the extra descriptive term radical to transparency rather just the term transparency.
Thank you. Radical transparency means transparency at the root. So, for example, after I become digital minister, there's more than 1,600 transcripts covering more than 6,000 speakers and in 300K or so speeches. And these are not the meeting records in that the usual public service produce. Rather, this is a line-by-line transcript. That is to say, when people visit me, when they lobby me, when I hold internal cross-ministerial collaboration meetings and so on, you can see, and even conversation with foreign MPs, you can actually see the entire transcript and even link to one. And this is unlike the PDF-based publishing. You can actually link to one single utterance. So you can link to, call me Audrey, don't call me the Right Honorable, and so on. But it's still within a context. So it's radical in two senses. One, everything is transcribed or published as video by default. But within 10 working days, if people have privacy concerns, if they relate an anecdote of their friend that has not cleared for publishing, they do get a chance to co-edit it before it goes out. But editing takes effort, and not editing, by default, everything goes out in the open. So that's what radical means in radical transparency. And the other thing of radical transparency is that it also extends to lobbyists and journalists. And indeed, the lobbyists and journalists find it quite radical. And because of this arrangement, all the lobbyists lobby me, if you look at the record, based on the common good argument, on the global goals, covering the future generations' welfare, because they know this record will exist for future generations to see. In a sense, the future is watching, and they will look quite bad if they make a suggestion that only benefit themselves or benefit the current generation at the expense of future generations.
Wow, that's really fantastic. My thought question on that particular topic on radical transparency, as a digital minister advocating for radical transparency, have you ever encountered any pushback from government official or policy maker? And how can the government truly accomplish radical transparency in your view?
So only the people who choose to work with me adopt this work out loud radical transparency norm. So to date, about 12 different ministries have sent secondments to my office to work under radical transparency. I'm not giving them orders. I'm not taking orders either. We're just co-creating. So the people-facing ministries, such as the Ministry of Culture, Education, Interior, National Communication Commission, you know, the usual suspects, finance, justice, you name it, they are happy to join. On the first year, the Foreign Service, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, did not join. But after they learned about the importance of Twitter diplomacy, they also sent someone to learn about public diplomacy using radical transparency. But for example, the Ministry of Defense never sent anyone. So I know nothing about national defense. So I don't encounter pushbacks because I don't push. I only work with the parts of the public service that want to work under such terms. I don't actually go and knock on the Ministry of Defense door and say, let's publish where our submarine or the sea mines are. I'm not doing that, so I don't encounter pushbacks.
Well, thank you very much for your answer. I think I'm running out of time. I just have one last question, and this is one of the questions that a lot of the parents have concerned about, and that's regarding the excessive use of electronic device, which has been a major concern for many, including health profession, for many years now. University of California, Berkeley published an article titled Gadget Addiction, which really caught my eye as I was researching the articles on that particular topic. In a current age of instant gratifications, we are interested in your thought on the following questions. While technology has fostered the human race or humanity, does our current consumption pattern adversely impact our analytical and creative ability, leading to the loss of focus in communication and make us just an indexer of data rather than the bearer of knowledge? Are we addicted to our own creation, the electronic gadgets?
Well, I'm not. And the trick of me being free from the addiction, there are two tricks. The first is don't touch the screen. and this is quite important. You will see that I interact with my iPad using this, that's a Apple Pencil. And this is not a new habit. I've done that since the original Palm Pilot, so like 20 years ago, and later on the Sharpsaurus, the Galaxy Note, the Apple Pencil. So basically, I interact with the screen using a pencil, a stylus, or using a keyboard. The only time my fingers touch the screen is just on zooming in and zooming out, and I don't stay on the screen long enough to form the addiction. Because if I touch the screen too often, then I find that it's not me swiping the screen swiping me. It's like they becoming a extension of my fingers or something, and I actually feel physical pain if I don't get to touch the screen, if it runs out of battery and so on. But if I go through an intermediary with intention, because with the stylus or keyboard or mouse, you have to begin with an intention, and then this addiction do not form. And the other trick is that I sleep for 8 hours every night. With sufficient sleep, studies showed that it's less likely for people to form addiction, either to gadgets or to other addictive substances. And I get to sleep for 8 hours because, well, I don't bring any connecting devices to the place where I sleep. And so I do have an iPod Touch. It serves as an alarm clock, sometimes plays some music, but it doesn't really enable anyone to find me. And so that is the trick of having sufficient sleep and therefore being cured of whatever addiction that was beginning to develop on the previous night.
Great. Thank you. You just convinced me to go ahead and buy a Samsung notebook or notepad. I've been thinking about buying that for a long time. My family's been pushing me to get it. I currently have the Samsung that I still use my finger to interact with, but I'm convinced now to buy a different one with the stylus.
Good for you.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Mr. Tang. I think my time is up. I'll turn the spotlight back to Dr. Yang.
And thank you so much, Dr. Lai, and then so much wonderful, so many wonderful conversation that we can go on for hours. And then I have unmuted enable everyone to open to turn on their mic. And if you have any questions for the minister, please raise your hand. You can see that raise hand button on the top of your screen, and please raise your hand, and then we'll invite you to ask question. And yeah, and then while we are waiting, I'll take the chance to ask the first question. Maybe, I mean, I'm quite jealous, and I have to say that being an art historian, I'm falling behind. I seem to live in the 19th century, and you are having the Apple Pencil, and I'm still with my pad and pencil. And so definitely that's not addiction. My question is that we are, as an art historian, we are concerned about the preservation of history. But while the technology moves so fast, it's somehow that, it feels like the personal memory probably would die even when one person passed away, or losing the password, or, losing the Facebook, the page, or even, the memory is no longer in this kind of substantial or, visible way, touchable physical existence. And what's your view on this, between the preserving the so-called, the personal and the collective memory and the new technology? And what's your solution for that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, and it relates to both, right? It relates to the history of places and the history of individuals, and both are equally important. For the history of places, we have worked with the ministries of culture and science and technology to digitalize the important places in Taiwan's history. So as you can see, the Kikumoto Hyakaten, the Juyuan Baihuo, or the Cocreation Terminal, that's a newer one, the Taichung Railroad Station, and many the old buildings and so on. Instead of asking people to physically travel to that place, which is quite difficult among the international pandemic, we're bringing these buildings to you. They are 3D scanned using photogrammetry and put into virtual reality. So just like the free assets on Flickr or on Pixabay and so on. These are the 3D free assets that people can then use in their movies, in their video games, in their interaction with the arts and things like that. And that adds a lot of textures to the co-presence, because like currently you're in your room with a lot of books. I'm in my room with 0 books. And while we were talking, we're not quite in the same place. But this sort of what we call Taiwan Digital Assets Library enable us with just a little bit of rehearsal and tweaking, switch to the Teams together mode. I believe Zoom and other like Skype has similar mode now, and we can place ourselves in exploratory place and enjoying some sort of co-presence feelings together. And our personal like family memories and so on. There's also a Taiwan Cultural Memory Bank that offers free hosting. I've uploaded quite a few photos by my grandma, by my dad, and so on into this place. And it also has a facility where everybody can curate and ask for more contributions about one historical incident, about one historical event from their fellow citizens. So they will be motivated to interview each other and upload the old photos, the videos, and so on. That adds not just to the individual, but also to the social sector's shared memory online. So I believe the technology can, of course, hamper, but can also assist people in telling the stories as a social sector.
Thank you. That's quite reassuring, and I hope that there'll be more funding also available for when the software needs updating as well. I think that's one of the concerns for the museum curators.
For the 2 websites, we actually did a historical reinterpretation of the word infrastructure in 2016. Minister Zheng Lijun of Culture at the time, we worked together to convince the National Budget Office that 基础建设 infrastructure covers also intangible infrastructure, such as these 2 websites. So not just things made of concrete, like literally concrete things, qualify for the Special Act budget. Nowadays, the digital equivalent of them also qualify for the budget.
And I think Taiwan is so advanced in this sense. Yeah, and then we have the first question. We will invite In Hong Chen, and can you unmute your microphone for questions?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hear me?
Yes.
This is Patrick. Actually, I'm together with Yin Hung Chen. Thank you, Minister. It was really very interesting. I have so many questions, but I'm going to go with one first, which is, the holographic. I'm so much looking forward to have a holographic presence. I love the 3D effect, the possibility to go inside a gallery and visit. But when do you think this is anything in the works for holographic opportunities? Because I think that would be the next step for technology.
Definitely, and I also do that every day. I actually have the headset with me, and so I've 3D modeled myself, and you can interact with me in any of those 3D spaces. For example, one space that I frequent is the XR space, and as you can see in the XR space, everyone can wear such a like no wire required headset and interact with one another in real time and have activities. And so it allows for not just easy modeling of one's own avatar, but also because this is actually a scanner, a depth camera, you can also scan your room or your place, your venue, and then bring other people into that venue for co-creation and social interaction. There's many places already using this for tours, for interaction, for education and things like that. I think the main problem that we used to face in Taiwan was that we did not have a tele-education mandate at any point in time until about 2 weeks ago. So this is the first time that we have to use tele-education. We still do not have a lockdown, but we've out of caution, switched to teleeducation in the past couple of weeks. So the education facilities are just now learning the presence of such technologies. So give them a little bit of time, and I think by their summer vacation, some of them will be able to work in virtual augmented reality and holographic reality. But previously, it's very hard to convince the teachers to use this because simply there was no need to.
I understand. Thank you so much. Now, it takes me to the next question, if I may. Just have one more. I have more, but just one more. It's like, related to health, like you said, when we touch the screen and so on. And I'm resisting the VR as much as I love it to, the experience of it. But I'm really resisting in terms of, how it can affect my eyes, my brain. Is there any research around new technology, like to know how much it affects human being, before we find some beautiful outlet to help us? Do we do testing on humans to see how it can be negative for sleep, for anything,
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of VR safety studies. And my suggestion is that only interact in VR as a shared reality. That is to say, use it to connect to real human beings in the presence of spaces that are real places. You will note that when I show the Taiwan Digital Assets Library, I emphasize that these buildings and venues are actually there, that you can one day visit it. The farthest I've traveled on VR is on the International Space Station. Of course, I can't quite easily physically go there, or to the Matterhorn Mountain in Switzerland. But still, these are real places that has real people's real memory attached to it. And I think this is crucially important, for if we only live in our own solo realities, then I do fear that we'll get addicted to such experiences that are not social and frankly speaking, antisocial. Okay. So I would suggest definitely read up on the VR safety studies, but also use VR as a shared reality, not a solo reality.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, in function. And then our next question is from Anne Kang. Anne, and could you unmute your microphone?
Yes. Hi, Minister Tang. My name is Anne Kang. I'm the member of Legislative Assembly in British Columbia in Canada. And previously, we have met before in Vancouver in UBC when you were presenting with Lucy. I know you have a photographic memory, so you probably remember me. So right now, my position is now the Minister of Advanced Education, so now oversight of UBC. My question is related to technology, because I used to be the Minister of Technology as well just a few months ago. So BC has not been as fortunate as Canada. We had a lot of COVID transmissions, and so therefore, our post-secondary system was pivoted to online. And so there was a lot of mental health issues, but as well, faculty, staff, and students had to learn how to pivot themselves online. I was wondering if you could share some of the experience, if that happened in Taiwan, because I know there was no transmission, so perhaps there was no reason to. If not, can you share what is transformative right now in Taiwan in terms of digital technology, areas of research and development engineering, and as well, what steps is Taiwan taking to encourage women to go into the technology, computer science sector, where we see it's more of a men-dominated sector?
Yeah, I have this recruitment short clip where I recruited people into the girls in cybersecurity, usually like high school or young undergrad level, to work in cybersecurity and study cybersecurity. And there's this interaction in that clip where this girl asked, and I quote, "Isn't cybersecurity mostly for boys?" And I responded, 电脑从来没有问过我的性别, right? Computer never asked about my gender, which is literally true, right? When you study cybersecurity, the computer do not ask which gender you're in. In Taiwan, we do have a pretty good gender equality in, for example, our ministers' parliamentary, that is to say 40% or more, actually more than 40% people in the parliament are women. In the ministerial cabinet, we're currently lower than we probably should, but we are also working on improving it thanks to the Gender Equality Committee. One place where we are seeing a lot of growth but still falls short is exactly as you point out, is in the graduates in science, technology, engineering, and math. At the moment, I think we just reached the 1/4 percentage of women who graduate in STEM. And so we work with not just educators, but with the students themselves to find out what's blocking them to work on the STEM issues. And not just, of course, the pink mask sometimes help for gender mainstreaming, but we also find that people are looking to their careers with a mind on shortening the gap between the genders on the so-called equal pay issue, and that is actually the main concern. So we're now doing a lot of efforts to narrow the gender pay gap, at the moment still at 14%, but as you can see, it's going very quickly downward, so that we can anticipate in 10 years' time, we will see a kind of negligible gender pay gap that will then encourage more people to work in STEM and to graduate in STEM, regardless of their gender. And the kind of rallying cry is that biology should not determine destiny. Of course, having our president being 100% women also helps here.
And thank you so much. And thank you, Anne, for the great question. And our next question goes to is from Harwinder Sandhu. I'm sorry about the pronunciation. Yeah, could you unmute your microphone? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. You pronounced it really well. Hi, Minister Tang. I am Harwinder Sandhu. I am the member of Legislative Assembly with my sister Anne Kang, and I'm so thrilled to finally get the opportunity to meet you. I've heard so many great things about you from Anne, and also I've been following Taiwan, how they've been leading the COVID guidelines. And today when Dr. Lai, I thank him for inviting me. I was so looking forward to this in order to get to meet you. Before becoming an MLA, Minister Tang, I was working in healthcare for the last 17 years in BC, and my last role was in a nurse, like a care coordinator role on a COVID unit. So being in the leadership role when first COVID rolled in, and then lack of PPE and all the, like, we didn't know enough about COVID and what effect it will have. It was highly stressful for all my staff and for my colleagues. So over the time now that numbers have spiked even more, it came and go in the waves. And healthcare workers, as you know, around the world, doctors and nurses already work shift work, nights and days, and that already take toll on their mental health. So here in BC, as we know, the COVID had effect on mental health all around the world. Here in BC, what we're hearing from healthcare frontlines, that they're at the breaking point. And I wonder what initiatives, what can you share that how Taiwan is handling that mental stress, whether it's in healthcare or the seniors or, you know, public health, and how did the technology play that crucial role? As I said, I've been diligently following and I was quite impressed. So I would really like to know your thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, our technological measures observe the ideas of calm technology, meaning that the more people interact with the technology, the more assured people feel. And that is only possible because we co-design such technologies with the people who are the most vulnerable. For example, the very senior people, as you mentioned, the people in the medical front lines and so on. So we design, for example, the SMS check-in system, not because it's cutting edge technology. SMS is not cutting edge technology, but because everybody knows how to send a SMS. We develop the technology based on the healthcare card, not because it's most advanced. It's not. It's introduced in 2004, right after SARS, but because everyone has at least 16 years of a short interaction with how the Haskell works for everyone above 16 years old, of course. But what I'm trying to say is that use the part of the touch points that people already are familiar with before the pandemic that enable people to anchor their familiarity with such technologies in a way that assure them that this will continue to work counter-pandemic. In some jurisdictions, they enforce the quarantine using new technology such as wearable Bluetooth dongles, bracelets, or other technologies. But because these are new, we didn't have those before the pandemic. It creates extra anxiety when this begins to malfunction. But what we've done instead in our digital quarantine is that we send a SMS message deliberately shaped very much in their text, like the earthquake warnings. And people have had a lot of experience with location-based earthquake warnings and advanced flood warnings way before the pandemic. So people understand, for example, the location-based quarantine SMS will not be able to read their emails or their WhatsApp messages because people understand it's on a different layer of things and therefore feel much more familiar, and therefore they feel assured when they receive the quarantine-based SMS messages.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And it's very reassuring too, because otherwise we feel that under the big data, and it seems like we live in a world with all the surveillance cameras and trace and track, all the apps, and then as if we live in the big brother world as well. Yeah, thank you.
That's right. So put data only where you already trust. That's our design principle.
Great. Yeah, and our next question comes from Xinchi from Bergman. Yeah, and Xinchi, could you unmute your microphone, please?
Hi, Mr. Tan. Nice meeting you. I'm a UBC professor, so living in Vancouver, and I have two questions for you. So first of all is that I joined 叶秉成教授's脸书, it has a Facebook group, and currently there are roughly 80,000 teachers on this particular group, and you know about it. So I'm trying to think, and this might be a very easy task for you, to see if there's a way to streamline some of these contributions from teachers, from parents, so that it can be much easier for teachers who are trying to cope with this online teaching and learning. The reason I'm talking about this is because in the past 16 months, I have been trying to teach my colleagues how to teach online. And in many ways, I know the struggle people have encountered in the first months and probably continue to struggle right now. And so it would be easy for, if it's possible, to try to figure it out in a way that we can actually streamline some of these really wonderful contributions. Secondly, Taiwan in the past 3 weeks, from my observations, has shared a lot of data, which is wonderful because these kind of data in terms of outbreaks help the public and help the government to communicate with the public. So in many ways, I wonder if this is something I have been trying to push the collaboration between Canada and Taiwan in terms of trying to have a transparency in terms of the data communications, because only transparency can enhance the trust. So just those two questions, probably really big, but.
Really great questions. Probably more suited for 5-hour seminars, but I have 5 minutes, so I will be brief. So yeah, the great social sector communities in Taiwan, that includes Ye Bingchen Professor's group, as well as I think Dream to the Power of N, Meng de En Sifang, and many other groups. They are instrumental in creating the guidelines for tele-education as well as for competence-based education. I think the streamlining you're referring to aligns very well with the basic education curriculum. Previously, we had difficulties partly because in the third year of the middle school, that's to say the 9th grade as well as the 12th grade, they were still using the old curriculum that more emphasized on the literacy, that is to say the teacher holding the right answers rather than competence, whereas the student creates the answers with the teachers. And so having the teachers work across two curriculum paradigm is really difficult, because online education only shines if you give the students the individual freedom to work with the material on their own, on their capstone projects and so on. It's almost impossible to synchronize across the screen the progress of all your students. But fortunately, beginning next semester, all the high school education will be using the new curriculum. And so that imparts a lot of more room for individual schools to incorporate the kind of co-creation spaces that is now being developed by the Dream of Power of N or by Professor Ye-Bing Chen and so on. So I will help the Ministry of Education to look into incorporating them into the guidelines, the not just pandemic prevention, but also teleeducation in general guidelines, especially on the middle school level. So thank you for bringing this up. Your second question, I think data is a very abstract term. So we talk about data governance, data norms, but really in every field there's a very different norm. So just like when you look at publications, text, the journalists have their norm about text in the journalism sector, fact-checking, balancing the sources, and so on. The academic publishers have their own norms, preprint, open access, of course, being the newer norms, but about citation, about the rigor and things like that. But nobody would say, let's train all the journalists and all the academic professors into the text norms. That doesn't even make sense, because journalism and academic publishing follows different norms. So rather than saying that we need to develop data collisions or data trusts or data relationships, nowadays I usually say let's work on, for example, building interoperable health record systems. Let's make sure that my vaccination records is recognized by the Canadian vaccination inspectors. Let's make sure that these health norms are carried out through the digital realm that connects people to people rather than just machines to machines, but still observe exactly the same health sector norms. I think for the state-to-state relationships, Canada and Taiwan both have the state-assured healthcare, state-assured education, state-assured communication and transportation, as well as indigenous rights. On these particular regards, it's the state duty to observe the social norms and build infrastructure on the digital realm that realize those norms. So my suggestion will be start bilateral conversations based on these specific sectors, and that would enable the data norms to converge much more easily than if we begin talking about data norms on international trade, e-commerce, and so on, which are less of the state's duty, and frankly speaking, the state may not have the most capacity to set such norms.
Thank you. And thank you so much, and to Professor Fong Bergman for the good questions. And then speaking of the open access, that would really create a lot of issues as well. We love the open access, but then thinking about the image copyright, then, yeah, that's great. So I think the time is up, and then we would like to thank our speaker, the keynote speaker, Minister Audrey Tang again, and also Dr. Wen Lai. It's wonderful discussion between you both, and it is really wonderful to listen to both of your the very insightful views, and then quite thought-provoking as well, leaving us a lot to think about, and wonderful. Thank you so much. And then, so we would like to thank the audience again who contribute to this and the live Q&A. That is lovely to have you. And we hope to see you again in our next lecture. That will be in July. And then artist Yu Zhengda will be talking about the performance in the expand field of liquefied queerness, and which will be, you know, quite visually stunning and a bit anyway, but so we are looking forward to seeing you again. And also in October we have artist Li Mingwei talking about the 6 stories about the beauty. So we'll hope to welcome you back. And but thanks again to Minister, and thank you so much for your time. We know this is maybe the most busy time for you in the pandemic, and while in an outbreak, just, you know, reached Taiwan, and then you are so amazing, you know, creating the very sufficiently with all the new apps. And then in the UK, we are very jealous about this as well. Yeah, thank you. And so wish everyone take care and stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll see you again thank you so much.
Live long and prosper. Bye.
Yeah. Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Tang.
Bye.